What if I told you that there is a prophecy left by the Pope himself before his death, and that this message was carefully silenced by the Vatican? Yes, one last message, a grim warning that never reached the public eye, a secret kept within the walls of the Holy See, in the dark corridors of the Vatican's secret library, that same place where ancient documents are under lock and key, far from the truth you deserve to know. But why hide it? Why was this prophecy considered too dangerous to reveal to the world? What is behind the Church's silence? What does the Vatican fear you will discover? For centuries, stories of banned books, lost gospels, and forgotten prophecies have circulated among occult scholars and researchers. Now, another piece of this dark puzzle emerges, a final, shadowy statement from one of the most powerful men in the Christian faith, a pope who, according to reports, knew too much. And before leaving, he left words that should never be read, but are about to be revealed. We are talking about a prophecy that directly connects with other mysteries hidden in the depths of the Vatican. Secret documents about the end of times, manuscripts that speak of the fall of the Church and an approaching judgment. Something so disturbing that it was immediately censored, classified, shelved, never to be mentioned again. But now fragments of that secret are coming to light, and the truth is about to explode before our eyes. Get ready. In this video, you will dive into the Vatican secrets, unveil the Pope's last prophecy, and understand why the Church hid these words with such desperation. We will analyze historical documents, explore hidden messages, and connect it all with the prophecies of Saint Malachi, which point directly to the last Pope in history. But before revealing the content of this prophecy, you need to understand why it was buried so deep. And it all starts with a simple detail that few have noticed, a detail that connects the past, the present, and perhaps the end. But before we move on to the revelation of this prophecy, I want to ask you something very important. If you're watching this video right now, it's no coincidence. There is something bigger going on, and perhaps you are being called to something beyond simple curiosity. Leave your prayer request in the comments. Yes, write it down here. It could be for you, for your family, for someone who needs light, protection, or spiritual direction. Let's create a chain of faith in this space. I and all who believe in the truth beyond the veil will read, intercede, and pray together. This video isn't just about hidden revelations. It's about awakening, about finding meaning in the silence they tried to impose on our faith. And believe me, when many voices come together in prayer, great things happen. Take advantage of this moment and like this video. This helps this message reach more people who need to hear this truth. And subscribe to the channel right now, because what we're about to reveal in the next few minutes and videos will surprise you even more. The Vatican has many secrets, and here is where they are being revealed, one by one. Activate the bell so you don't miss anything, because today you will discover what was said before death, and why this prophecy could be fulfilling right before our eyes. And now, let's dive deeper, because the next detail you'll hear wasn't in the books. And now that you are here, immersed in this universe of mysteries, prophecies, and hidden truths that surround the Vatican, it is impossible to ignore the central figure of all this, the Pope. Whether talking about Francis or any other pontiff who has left us surrounded by unsolved enigmas, one thing is certain: none of them leaves this world without carrying with them secrets that never reached the light of day. In the case of Pope Francis in particular, his last years of pontificate were marked by veiled speeches, controversial positions, and deafening silences on issues that shook the foundations of the Church. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's what the lines always showed. There was something he couldn't or didn't want to say. Rumors behind the scenes at the Vatican suggest that Francis was pressured not to reveal certain spiritual truths that contradict doctrines established centuries ago. The burning question is, what did the Pope know? And if he really knew something so powerful, so divisive, that it could destabilize, say, everything we know about Christianity, why didn't it ever come to light officially? Anonymous sources, supposed former high-ranking members of the Vatican, revealed in unauthorized interviews that a letter was written shortly before the Pope's death, a kind of prophetic document containing reflections and visions that he claimed to have received in recent years. This letter was never officially published. The content, according to these sources, was immediately archived in the most secret compartments of the Vatican Library, that sector that not even cardinals have free access to, the same place where the secrets are supposedly kept, apocryphal gospels, forbidden texts from the Bible, and even manuscripts that would reveal the true story of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Genesis itself. This behavior of the Church is nothing new. Over the centuries, the Vatican has silenced countless documents, books, and prophecies considered too dangerous for common people. This includes the famous Prophecy of Saint Malachi, which lists all the popes in history until the last, called Peter the Roman, the one who would rule in the midst of great persecution and spiritual chaos, and after him, the end would come. Many scholars believe that Francis would be the latter, or at least the immediate predecessor. And if this theory is right, what exactly is about to happen? Francis, throughout his pontificate, demonstrated concern about certain topics. He spoke of a church in crisis, of a decaying faith, and of a silent spiritual war brewing behind the scenes in the world. Cryptic messages such as "Beware of wolves in sheep's clothing" and "The day will come when the church will seem betrayed from within" were said by him at key moments. Phrases that, for many, went unnoticed. But for those who research the secrets of faith, they are not mere metaphors. They are codes, alerts, disguised revelations for those who know how to read between the lines. There is a theory that circulates among scholars of occult texts that says that the last popes have intentionally left hidden messages in homilies, speeches, and even publicly transmitted blessings. These would be coded signals that only now, with the right tools, can we interpret. And this is where the last prophecy comes in. The one that Francis, or whoever the last pope in question was, would have left as a kind of spiritual testament for those who wish to see beyond the veil. This document, according to those who claim to have read it or to have had access to excerpts of it, talks about the collapse of a spiritual structure, the emergence of a new form of faith, not institutional, but revealed, and about a last sign that would precede a great worldwide revelation. The scariest? Many of these signs are already happening now. Wars in the name of faith, moral collapses within the church itself, internal divisions, and a people increasingly skeptical and spiritually lost. But what draws the most attention is the way the Vatican reacted to this supposed prophecy. Instead of denying, there was just silence. No official note, no public statements, just the vacuum, denial by omission, which for many is the strongest confirmation of all. When it comes to the Vatican, silence speaks louder than any speech. Now imagine, if all this is true, and this prophecy really exists, why did the church choose to hide and not share with the faithful? Is it panic fear, afraid of revolt? Or is it the certainty that, upon knowing the truth, would people no longer accept living under the same structure of faith that has been sustained for centuries? And if you feel, like many others, that there is something wrong, that there are pieces missing from this spiritual puzzle, then this video is for you. Because what we are investigating here goes far beyond a simple rumor. It is a journey in search of the hidden truth, of what was buried over time, but which is now beginning to emerge with force. And you are here at exactly the right time. At the end of this video, I want to know your true opinion. But more than that, I want your active participation. Write the sentence here in the comments. I want the truth. If you believe it's past time to stop hiding what's rightfully ours, and if you want to strengthen this chain of revelation even further, also write, release the prophecy. This isn't just engagement. It's a way of coming together as a community around what history has tried to erase. The connection between everything we are revealing here and the so-called prophecy of the popes, attributed to Saint Malachi, cannot be ignored. This prophecy, written in the 12th century, remained hidden for centuries until it was discovered, or better said, allowed to be revealed, only in part. It lists 112 short Latin mottos, each supposedly associated with a successor pope to Celestine II, who reigned from 1143 onwards. Strikingly, many of these mottos appear to accurately describe details, coats of arms, origins, or outstanding characteristics of the popes who came in the following centuries. Coincidence? Maybe for some. But for those who study the Vatican mysteries, This is something much bigger. It is a prophetic timeline. And we are precisely at the end point of that line. According to the list, the last pope of the prophecy would be Peter the Roman, a name that in itself carries gigantic symbolic weight. Peter was the first pope, the founder of the church. From the perspective of Catholic tradition, and seeing him listed again at the end represents a return to the beginning, a closing of the cycle. And according to the prophecy itself, this last pope would reign during a great spiritual tribulation and would be the shepherd of a people under persecution. After his reign, the prophecy ends in a frightening way. During the last persecution of the Holy Roman Church, Peter the Roman will reign, who will feed the flock among many tribulations. And when these are completed, the city of the 7 hills will be destroyed, and the terrible judge will judge the people. The end. Now take a deep breath and follow me. The Vatican is called the City on 7 Hills. The term terrible judge can easily be interpreted as referring to the final judgment. And this Peter, the Roman, would be the one who, even without carrying that name literally, would fulfill the symbolic role of the last guardian of the faith in times of chaos. The most intriguing. The Pope Francis is the 266th Pope of the Church and 112th on the list of Malachi. In other words, in direct counting, it represents the conclusion of the prophecy. But here's where the fog starts to deepen. Many scholars believe that Francis would indeed be the last pope, or at least the penultimate, responsible for setting the stage for the Great Revelation, or Great Fall. Others believe that Peter the Roman will still come, and it will be an unknown pope, elected in extraordinary circumstances in the midst of a global spiritual collapse. The question that needs to be asked, and I want you to think about this deeply, is, could it be that this prophecy is already being fulfilled right now, before our eyes, and no one is noticing because we have been trained to ignore signs like this? Look at recent events. See how faith seems to be being corroded by scandals, by internal divisions, by an ever greater distance between the people and spiritual truths. See the world plunged into wars, into moral crises, into a collective feeling of spiritual apathy. This is not just a coincidence. It's a pattern, a script that is being followed with prophetic precision. And meanwhile, the Vatican remains silent. When confronted with the prophecy of Saint Malachi, the Vatican has never officially confirmed or denied it. He always preferred to treat it as a historical curiosity, as a document with no spiritual value. But if so, why keep the contents of the prophecy locked away for so long? Why prevent ordinary believers from accessing this complete list for centuries? And why right now are so many people all over the world starting to talk about it, looking for its translation, connecting the dots that were previously loose? The name Peter the Roman may not literally mean a man with that name, but rather a symbolic representation of someone who returns to the essence of the church, who faces profound persecution, and who witnesses the collapse of what was built. And at the same time, he can also represent the one who opens the door to the final revelation. Are we about to experience the most prophetic moment of our era? Could it be that the signs of the end times are among us, hidden in speeches, disguised in global events, and encoded in the words of a pope who tried to warn the world before he died? The truth is that most people are not yet prepared to accept this type of revelation. It's easier to think that this is all just symbolic, just superstition. But what if it isn't? What if the Pope's latest prophecy is directly connected to the end of this dark and mysterious list, written almost 1,000 years ago? What if the destruction of the city on 7 hills is not just a metaphor, but something real, something imminent? I know that these are difficult questions, and that all of this affects our faith, our certainties, what we have always learned. But the mission here is this: to bring the secrets of the Vatican to light, prohibited texts as hidden prophecies, and help you connect the dots that history tried to erase. Because while many remain blind, those who see beyond the surface need to come together. And what perhaps makes all of this even more disturbing is the realization that the Pope himself, in the last days of his pontificate, did not remain completely silent. On the contrary, he began to let clues, fragments of thoughts, and deep reflections, which were, for the most attentive eyes, true coded cries, for spiritual help, not in a desperate tone, but with the solemnity of someone who knew that I was leaving something that the world would need to understand one day. And maybe that day is today. Perhaps you now, hearing these words, are among those who have been called to realize what has gone unnoticed by so many others. One of the most repeated phrases in his final homilies, which at the time seemed merely philosophical, but now sound like veiled prophecies, was said in a firm tone. Humanity's faith is being negotiated in silence, while the structures of truth crumble without fanfare. For many, this seemed like a generic criticism of modern times. But for those who understand the Vatican secrets and the subtle movements of the Church, these words were a warning, a sign that something bigger was afoot, something he couldn't say directly, but that needed to be communicated somehow. At another time, in an internal speech never televised but leaked by a dissident cardinal, he reportedly said, "The enemy no longer knocks on the door." He entered and sat down at the table. This speech, which for the majority of believers has never even been mentioned, carries a devastating symbolic force. She suggests that the threat to the Church is not just out there, in skeptics or in external persecution, but rather infiltrated into the very heart of the religious structure. The Pope, it seems, was aware of internal movements, censored documents, decisions made in the shadows, all carefully covered up so as not to arouse outrage. But he tried to warn, and history recorded it. In one of his last public blessings, given on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, he looked at the crowd and, in an unusual tone, said, "The time will come when the hidden truths of faith will be revealed, but few will have eyes to see." A phrase that seems to come from an apocryphal gospel, but that was said on camera, in front of thousands. Few noticed, few commented, but it was registered. And now, analyzing it through the lens of Saint Malachi's prophecy and the Vatican's secret documents, this phrase gains another weight. It seems to refer not to a simple doctrinal crisis, but to the revelation of concrete facts, hidden for centuries, that threaten to rewrite everything we understand as sacred history. Another excerpt, this time from an internal document, a letter that would have been written as a personal outburst, further reinforces this view. In the letter, supposedly, written by hand, the Pope writes, "What men call faith today is often a shadow of what it was. The proofs are kept. I saw them, and yet I was forbidden to speak. May God forgive me." This phrase, if authentic, could be the most powerful and tragic confession in the entire history of the Vatican. The evidence is in storage. What exactly did he see? What type of documentation, artifact, or record could shake institutional faith so much as to deserve eternal silence? We are talking about Gospels that contradict the official version of the Bible, censored letters of the apostles, manuscripts that reveal another side of Jesus. The answer, from what can be understood behind the scenes, involves much more than doctrine. It involves power. It involves control of faith. Because if such evidence comes to light, millions could abandon the current religious structure, or at least question its legitimacy. And that is why, even in recent days, the Pope never said everything openly, but he also never completely shut up. He spoke with his eyes, with the pause between words, with the weight of the choice of each phrase. It was as if he knew that I couldn't face the structure directly, but I also couldn't leave humanity without signs. If you stop to watch some of his recent public appearances, and do so carefully, you will notice a different restlessness in his posture, the weight of his shoulders, the gaze fixed on seemingly neutral moments, the way he held the microphone. Everything seemed to say more than the words spoken. Because when someone carries a secret that could change the spiritual destiny of humanity, this weight is even reflected in the body. And perhaps that is why he made a point of repeating, on more than one occasion, "The truth will set you free, but before that, it will make you question everything." An adaptation of a biblical passage, yes, but said with an emphasis that didn't seem just rhetorical. It was a challenge. It was almost a warning. All of Vav. This brings us here. What we have before us is not just a set of loose sentences. It's a puzzle as spiritual that the Pope himself may have left on purpose so that, when the time was right, people like you, who are willing to see beyond, could pick up the pieces. And that moment may be now. Because never before have these lines made so much sense. Never before has the world been so spiritually lost. Never before has the silence of the Church been so deafening. And if all of this is connected with the prophecy of the popes, with the end of a cycle and the beginning of something new, then perhaps the last prophecy is not just a prediction, but a calling, a call to conscience, to the search for truth, to the liberation of a faith that perhaps, for centuries, has been imprisoned by human structures. Now, if you've made it this far, it's because it resonated with you in some way. So, I want to ask you something. Leave the sentence in the comments. The truth was there all along. If these words touched something inside you. Or write, the Pope tried to warn us. If you believe that all this is no coincidence, your comments are part of this journey. They are signs that you are ready to see what many still cannot. And what makes all of this even more intriguing, or rather disturbing, is the Vatican's complete and utter silence in the face of this final prophecy. A silence that screams, a silence that echoes much more than any words could. At no point since rumors about the existence of a possible Pope's last prophecy began to circulate has there been an official response from the Holy See. No press conference, no official note, no denials, nothing. Just the same age-old silence that the Vatican adopts whenever something too sensitive threatens to escape the golden walls of the Holy City. And this behavior is not new. There is a pattern. Whenever information emerges that has the potential to shake the pillars of traditional faith, especially when that information involves Vatican secrets, hidden prophecies, prohibited texts, ancient documents hidden in the secret library, or relics that contradict the official narrative. The Church's first reaction is not debate, explanation, dialogue. It's silence. It's the block. It is denial without words. And that's exactly what happened when independent journalists, historians, theology researchers, and even members of the Church themselves began to raise questions about this sensitive topic. There are records, for example, of an Italian reporter who, a few days after the Pope's death, tried to publish an article detailing a possible letter left by the pontiff containing a prophetic message. The matter was rejected by several press vehicles and, as he himself revealed in a later statement, there was direct interference from representatives linked to the Vatican, asking that the content be avoided. The reporter disappeared from the public scene for a few months, and when he returned, he refused to bring up the subject again. Another emblematic case is that of a French scholar, specialist in eschatology and Christian theology, who published an in-depth study on the parallels between the Pope's final words and the prophecy of Saint Malachi, including excerpts that were supposedly never officially translated by the Church. In less than 24 hours, the study was taken down, and the website of the university that hosted it issued a statement saying that the content did not represent the institution's official position. But what caught the most attention was the fact that no Church authority came forward to explain why the study was wrong or inadequate. Once again, silence. In closed forums, online theological communities, and spiritual research groups, many similar reports began to emerge. People who say they tried to raise this issue in Catholic seminaries and were immediately silenced. Priests who discreetly mentioned the prophecy in homilies and, the next day, were transferred or told to avoid controversial topics. All of this reinforces the feeling that there is an invisible and unbreakable barrier around this final message, a spiritual, institutional, and media shield that seems determined to prevent the truth from coming to light. And if you're wondering why, the answer may lie precisely in the content of this prophecy. Because if the Pope actually saw or knew something in his final days, something that would call into question the structure of institutionalized faith, that would reveal the hidden side of the history of Christianity, or that would point to an imminent spiritual collapse, then keeping it secret becomes a matter of survival, not spiritual survival, but power survival, of control, of narrative. It is impossible not to remember what happened to the apocryphal Gospels, with the Book of Enoch, with the Dead Sea Scrolls, all of them hushed up, censored, discredited, and only much later allowed for public analysis, already, under an institutional filter. The same tactic is being applied now. The Vatican knows how to contain a storm, knows how to divert attention, But what you may not know is that the truth, when it is ready to emerge, finds paths where no one imagines. Because today, with the internet, with the decentralized dissemination of information, with channels like this, ordinary people, like me, like you, have the power to investigate, to connect dots, to access old documents, compare speeches, interpret symbols, and most importantly, feel when something is being hidden. The spiritual instinct of those who seek the truth cannot be silenced with cold communications or the absence of them. And it is exactly this instinct that is awakening in thousands of people around the world who are beginning to see the signs and question what was previously accepted without doubt. And if this is the case for you, if you also feel that there is more to this story than we have been allowed to see, that there is something hidden in the Pope's final prophecy that needs to come to light, then you are not alone. You are joining a generation that no longer accepts ready-made answers, that is not satisfied with official versions, who wants to see forbidden texts with their own eyes, hear hidden messages with their own ears, and truly understand why does the Vatican insist so much on keeping certain topics silent. And now that you understand the depth of this silence carefully maintained by the Vatican, it's time to look inside. I want you to reflect with me, not as a mere spectator, but as someone who feels that there is something wrong, something hidden, something about to be revealed, something that deep down you always knew existed. Answer me honestly, are we living the fulfillment of this prophecy? When you look at today's world, with its spiritual crises, with the collapse of morality, with the chaos that takes place in the name of faith, with the confusion of values, and with people's increasing distance from the truth, do you really believe that all this is just a coincidence? Or are the signs there, plain to see, but most people insist on not seeing? A prophecy of Saint Malachi. It does not just talk about a name, a pope, or an ecclesiastical succession. It speaks of an era, from a time marked by tribulation, by internal conflicts, by silent spiritual persecution. And when we look at recent events, scandals within the church, leaked documents, priests expelled for talking too much, believers disillusioned and abandoning their faith. All of this begins to fit together into a narrative that seems larger than any human structure. If the last pope was really among us, if Francis was the last prophesied, or perhaps the penultimate, the one who would prepare the way for the so-called Peter the Roman, then what next? This is the question that doesn't want to be silenced. Because if the prophecy has come to an end, if the cycle of popes has ended, what awaits us next? What happens when the last piece is placed on the board? What happens when the Vatican's silence can no longer contain the cry for truth? Could the next step be revelation? Will the Vatican's secret archives, for centuries guarding documents that could completely transform faith as we know it, will they finally be opened? Will the forbidden Gospels, you hidden texts of the Bible, and unrevealed prophecies, will they come to light as a last attempt to redeem centuries of manipulation and censorship? And even more, will this transformation be peaceful, or will it be accompanied by a great shock of global consciousness, a collective spiritual awakening, where everything that was taught as sacred will undergo a profound review, painful, but necessary? These questions are not exaggeration, they are inevitable. Because if all this is true, if these connections we are drawing here make sense, and more people feel that they do, then what remains for us now is to be attentive, not just as curious, but as seekers of truth. Because the truth is being revealed, yes, but it won't come from above. It won't come from golden pulpits. She will emerge from the shadows of the secret archives, of the voices that dare to speak up, of the small clues left by those who knew, but who were silenced. And maybe, just maybe, this video, this conversation between you and me, is one of those voices, one of those clues, one of those signs. If you are feeling this, if this feeling of spiritual restlessness is being confirmed within you right now, then write in the comments, "I see the signs." Or write, "The prophecy is being fulfilled," if you believe that we are witnessing the realization of the last chapters of this story. This is more than a comment. It is a code among those who are awakening. It is a call to spiritual resistance. If everything that has been exposed so far makes sense to you, If the pieces of this spiritual puzzle begin to fit together in your mind, it is because perhaps you are beginning to see what many still cannot. And when that happens, when the veil begins to fall, it is impossible to go back. It's like lighting a candle in a dark room. Suddenly everything that was hidden begins to slowly reveal itself. And it is at this point that the most dangerous and most necessary questions begin to arise. Questions that touch on the deepest foundations of faith, doctrine, and history that has been told generation after generation as absolute truth. Because if this prophecy really is true, if in fact it was written based on divine revelations or mystical visions that surpass time and human logic, then we need to face a shocking possibility. The Church has known for centuries what is coming, and instead of preparing the people for this, they chose to hide it. He chose to remain silent. He chose to protect the structure, not the truth. And that brings us to one of the most intriguing questions you can ask right now. What else is being hidden? The Vatican is, without a doubt, the most powerful religious institution in the history of humanity. Within its walls, there are documents, manuscripts, letters, relics, and books that have never been shown to the public. We know that the Vatican's secret library, it houses miles of underground archives that few, very few, are authorized to access. And whenever a document is leaked or information escapes, it is denied, discredited, or ignored. But why so much zeal? Why so much protection around certain texts? What exactly is there that could change everything? Recently, within the shadows of the church structure itself, rumors have surfaced that one of these documents, classified for centuries as dangerous apocryphal, may contain alarming information. Not just about historical events, but about the future. Yes, you heard right. About the future of humanity. An ancient text, written by a cleric who reportedly had a detailed prophetic vision, so detailed that it accurately described events that only happened centuries after his death. And among these visions would be included the exact date of the end of the world. This document, according to reports from researchers and scholars who had access to parts of it, was kept under absolute secrecy because it contained predictions so precise that they could not be treated as coincidence. He talks about wars, pandemics, social and spiritual collapses, and it all culminates in one day, a specific date, one final point. And no, we're not talking about a generic code or vague symbolism. We are talking about numbers, coordinates, descriptions, and a countdown written with frightening clarity. Now, imagine the impact that the full disclosure of this document would have, the chaos it would cause, the spiritual disruption it would cause, churches being questioned, the leaders trying to contain the panic, the media trying to stifle or ridicule. That's why it remains locked, shrouded in secrecy, hidden, behind doors that can't be opened with ordinary keys, but perhaps can be opened with courage, curiosity, and faith. And here, on this channel, we are about to take another step towards that revelation. In the next video, I'll show you what we discovered about this document. Let's analyze what it could be the most dangerous text ever kept by the Vatican, and I guarantee you won't want to miss it. If you've stayed with me this far, it's because this message touched something inside you, and that already puts you among the few who are really awake, among those who no longer accept packaged truths, and are in search of what is really hidden behind the walls of the Vatican, among forbidden documents, hidden prophecies, and ancient secrets. You are different. And so, I want to ask you something special now. Subscribe to the channel. Seriously, if you made it to the end of this video, it's because this content makes sense to you. So don't let it stop here. Press the subscribe button, activate the bell, and come with me until the end of this journey. What we will reveal in the next videos goes far beyond what the church wants you to know. And do me a favor, comment below, "I went all the way." This shows that you are among those who endure the truth until the last second, that you do not run away when the revelations get thicker. Comment on this now and let me know who is on my side in this investigation. Oh, and leave a like too. This isn't just a button, it's YouTube's way of understanding that this content needs to reach more people. And if you want more people to wake up like you, likes make a real difference. And now don't leave here. The next video is already appearing on your screen. Click on it and stay with me. Let's talk about the secret Vatican document that may contain the exact date of the end of the world. Yes, you read that right. Go there now and prepare your spirit, because what you hear could change everything.